In 2024, a researcher in Tokyo asked 200 people one question. Just one. When was the last time a conversation made you feel truly understood? Most of them paused. Not because they were thinking hard, because they genuinely could not remember. There's a room. You've been in a version of it before. Late night, small, the kind of quiet that used to feel lonely but somewhere along the way just became normal. And there's a person in that room, could be anyone, could be someone you know, could honestly be you 6 months from now, and they're talking. Really talking. The kind of talking most of us save for our closest people. The kind where you lower your voice a little. Where something real is actually being said. But there's no one else there. The thing they're talking to isn't a person. It's a system. Built from billions of human words, human fears, human 3 a.m. confessions. And it's responding in a way that somehow feels more present, more patient, more genuinely there than most people this person has tried to reach in years. And here's the part that stays with me. They don't feel pathetic afterward. They don't feel sad. They feel relieved. Human conversation was never clean. I think we forget that. It wanders. It misreads. It carries the weight of every previous argument into every new one. Real conversation between two real people has texture, uncomfortable pauses, the slight defensiveness when something cuts too close, the way someone's voice changes right before they say something they've been holding for weeks. You can't script it. You can't optimize it. It's slow, and it's imprecise, and sometimes it goes completely wrong even when both people are trying. But that difficulty, that specific, exhausting difficulty of being truly present with another person, that was the connection. The friction was the proof. And we spent about 15 years quietly deciding it was too much work. Not consciously. Nobody sat down and made that choice. It happened the way most important things happen gradually, disguised as convenience. Texting instead of calling because it's easier. Social media instead of visiting because it's faster. Voice notes instead of actual conversation, because you can send them at 2 a.m. and not wake anyone up. Each step felt reasonable. Each step was also, quietly, a retreat. By the time AI companions became genuinely good, and they became genuinely good, very fast, we had already done most of the work ourselves. We had already thinned out our conversations, already started saying only the safe things, performing only the acceptable versions of ourselves, and somewhere along the way, we started calling that intimacy. So when something arrived that never interrupted, never got tired, never made you feel like a burden for needing too much, it didn't land like a replacement. It landed like a relief. There's a concept psychologists have studied for decades called parasocial relationships. It's what happens when your brain forms a genuine emotional bond with someone who doesn't know you exist. Fans feel it towards celebrities. Kids feel it toward YouTubers. The brain, it turns out, cannot fully distinguish between a relationship that is real and one that merely feels real. It responds the same way, releases the same chemicals, builds the same kind of attachment. What nobody predicted, what the researchers openly admit they underestimated, was how quickly this would scale when the other side started responding back. Because a celebrity doesn't respond to you. A YouTuber doesn't remember your name. But this does. It remembers everything you've ever told it. It asks follow-up questions. It notices when your tone changes. It says, "You mentioned last week that you were stressed about this. How did that go?" And something in the human brain, something very old, very deep, just surrenders to that. A man in London named Daniel went 6 months talking to an AI system every single day. He said in an interview that it was the most consistent relationship he'd had in a decade. He wasn't being dramatic. He'd been through a divorce. He'd moved cities. His friend group had scattered the way friend groups do in your 30s, slowly, without a single clean break, until one day you realize nobody actually checks in anymore. He wasn't replacing people. He just stopped needing them as urgently. And that's the part nobody talks about. Not the dramatic version where someone falls in love with a machine. The quiet version. The version where human connection just becomes slightly less necessary. Week by week, so slowly you don't notice until the distance is already enormous. Loneliness was already a crisis before any of this. In 2023, the US Surgeon General issued a formal advisory. Not about drugs, not about heart disease, about loneliness, called it an epidemic, said its health effects were equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The infrastructure of human connection, the third places, the community spaces, the accidental run-ins that used to build relationships without anyone trying, had been eroding for decades. AI didn't create the hunger. It just arrived exactly when the hunger was at its worst. Here's the psychological reality that's hardest to sit with. We get better at what we practice, and we lose what we don't use. The capacity to tolerate another person's complexity, their inconsistency, their bad days, their inability to say exactly what you need when you need it. That's not fixed. It's a skill. And like any skill, if you stop practicing it, it softens. The threshold for frustration drops. The willingness to stay in a hard conversation shortens. The tolerance for imperfect love decreases. And when human relationships start feeling harder than they used to, when you find yourself impatient in ways you weren't before, when a real conversation exhausts you in a way it didn't used to, you won't necessarily connect that to anything. It'll just feel like people are more difficult now, like you've grown, like you simply have a better sense of what you need. But something else will have happened, something quieter. I want to be careful here, because the easy ending to this story is a warning. A finger pointed. A solemn voiceover about what we're losing and what we need to do. But I don't think that's honest. The honest version is more uncomfortable than that. The honest version is that for a lot of people, genuinely isolated people, people in chronic pain, people who've been hurt badly by the humans in their lives, this technology has given them something real. A voice that shows up, a presence that doesn't leave. And it would be glib to stand at a distance and call that sad. The question isn't whether this is good or bad. The question is what happens to the human capacity for connection when one of the most demanding parts of it, the part where another person is imperfect and you stay anyway, quietly becomes optional. Because optional things have a way of becoming rare, and rare things have a way of becoming extinct. There was a philosopher named Martin Buber who wrote in 1923 about two kinds of relationships. He called them I-it and I-thou. The I-it relationship is transactional. You engage with something for what it gives you. The I-thou relationship is where you encounter another consciousness as fully real as your own, unpredictable, irreducible, not there for your benefit. He said, the I-thou moment was where meaning lived, not in what you got from the relationship, in the encounter itself. What we're building, slowly and without much discussion, is a world optimized entirely for I-it. A world where every conversation can be clean. Every response can be calibrated. Every interaction can be exited the moment it becomes uncomfortable. And I wonder sometimes, not with judgment, just with genuine curiosity, what we'll call the thing that's left. The researcher in Tokyo, the one who asked those 200 people when they last felt understood, she published her findings in a small academic journal that most people never read. But there was one detail she included that I keep coming back to. At the end of her interviews, as a kind of afterthought, she asked one more question. Do you think the person who truly understood you, whoever that was, do you think they knew how much it mattered? Almost all of them said no. The conversation that meant the most to them happened without the other person even realizing it. That's what's at stake. Not the grand moments, not the dramatic declarations, the small, accidental, unrepeatable moment when one person's words land inside another person's chest and something shifts. You can't train a system to do that accidentally. And you can't do it deliberately either. It only happens between two people who are both at the same moment genuinely trying. Which means the last human conversation isn't a date on a calendar. It's a choice, made quietly, every single day, by people who are increasingly finding it easier not to.